Greetings. In this video, I'm going to run you through HTML forms and input. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so forms are an integral part of web page development. You use forms all the time, from entering things like your login ID, your password, searching for things on Google, pretty much anything that you can think of that requires interactivity on a web page. Usually a form or some sort of text input or drop-down boxes or radio boxes or buttons. You're constantly interacting with forms. Basically what a form does is it allows you to select or type something up and then submit it to a server on the internet, and then that server processes that form data. So let's say you log in, okay? You type in your user ID, your password into a form, you hit submit. That information is transmitted to a server on the internet who goes, oh, hey, it's Todd. He wants to log in. Okay, processes that data, does whatever it does, and then sends back a result, which, say for example with Facebook, would be to load up the Facebook interface. Okay? In essence, that's what a form is used for. Okay? Now, so what a form does is it contains input elements like text fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, and more. Form can also contain select list, text area, field set, legend, and label elements, which I'm going to walk you through most of that right now. So here's what a form looks like. Okay. What we have is this. Excuse me. You open up your web page, and then you have the form tag. Okay. And after form tag, then you need to tell the form what to do. Now, in most cases, when you're really developing web pages for the internet, that action will usually be some sort of script like PHP or JavaScript or something of that nature. Other programming languages which take whatever you're sending into the form, sends it to that script, and then your web server does whatever it's going to do with the data. Okay. In our case here, in this class, because it's such a basic introductory course, is our forms really right now aren't going to really do much of anything. In JavaJoes 3, your final assignment, your form will send an email, okay, when you type everything in. But that's pretty much it for this course. Now I teach another one called Business Programming, where we go a step beyond and we actually start doing things with forms, and then things get really exciting. It's a lot of fun. So anyways, you have your form, your open form tag. Inside your form tag, you have what are called input elements. And again, this is like text fields, radio buttons, all sorts of cool things. Okay, and then when you're all done with those inputs, then you just close out your form tag by putting in a closing form tag. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and look at the first input element. So the most important form element is the input element, and it's used to select user information. Now, this input element can vary in many ways depending on the type of attribute. Now, your input element can be, again, a type of text field, a checkbox, password, radio button, submit button. Those are the primary ones. Those drop-down list. There are all kinds of different things we can do. But the common ones are the ones that I'm going to show you in this video. Now let's go ahead and look at a text field real quick. So I have my form, my open and closing form tag here. Okay, my action, it doesn't do anything at this point because, well, we're just kind of testing it out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in two input fields. One for the first name, the second one for their last name. Okay, so here's how this works. Now, what you do is you type in a description of what should be in the form data. In this case, it's first name. Now, if you don't have any kind of special formatting or anything like that, which we don't yet because we haven't delved into enough CSS yet to do this, then you simply just type in the text description of what you're expecting the user to enter. Okay. In this case, it's first name. Type in a colon because we need some sort of separator, and a colon's a perfect one. It's real basic and gets the job done. And then type in an extra space. And then you have a new tag called input. you need to tell it what the type is. In this case, our type is text. That's our attribute. And then we need a name. Now, the name attribute comes in handy later when in another course when we start using a program like CS or PHP to process this data. But for right now, we're just going to give a self-descriptive name to this name attribute of what we're gathering here. In this case, I'm going to say I'm gathering somebody's first name. Now remember, no spaces. Okay? And then I'm going to close out this input tag. It's self-closing. And then I'm going to put in a line break because I'm going to have another line, and this one's going to say last name. So what I can do is I'm going to copy the line of code above right here and then just paste it, change a couple things. Okay. One, I'm going to get rid of this line break for now because I don't need it. I'm going to change first name to last name, both in the name and in my text here. Right? All right. And I'm going to go ahead and call this file text fields. Save it as HTML. And then I'm going to go ahead and run my code. And all you'll see here is just two fields, first name and last name. They are text. I can type in however many characters I want in each field. And then eventually I'll put a button on there, and if I click submit, it'll do whatever it is it's supposed to do. Okay. Now, another type of field is what's called a password field. I'm going to go ahead and copy the code that I just created and modify it a little bit. I'm going to save the file name as password field. And a password field, basically, it's pretty much the same thing as a text field, but the type is password instead of text. Okay. So let's say I want somebody to type in their password and confirm it. Okay. If I want their, so I'll say password and then confirm are the two names of the fields that I want. Okay. And then I'll just change the name here too to password and confirm. I changed the input type from text to password. And then run it in Chrome. Okay. Now the difference is when I type in my password, unlike with the text field that actually shows you the characters that you're typing in, passwords don't do that. Okay? It just shows a bunch of dots by default. You can change that behavior, but that's pretty typical. Okay? So that's what you would put in if somebody was putting in a password for a login. You don't want to necessarily show that as clear text. Okay? All right, the next one I want to show you real quick is radio buttons. Again, I'm going to just copy the code that I created earlier, paste it in a new field or new a file, and call it radio buttons. Excuse me, a little bit of a cold, so bear with me here. All right, now here's how radio buttons work. Radio buttons, what they do is they let you select one choice of a limited number of choices. So, for example, let's say you want somebody's gender, okay, male or female. Well, 95.99% of the population are either male or they're female. Okay? So that's a pretty standard one to use if you're looking for specific demographic information. It's probably the simplest one to use for the examples in this course. Now, here's what this looks like. The input type is radio, and the name, I'll just put gender, and the value The first one would be male. I keep wanting to type in M-A-I-L. Alright, male. And then the second value is, oops, I hit the wrong button. Let me back that up. Alright, and then the second field, second button, sorry, is female. So I just change a couple of quick things here. I change male to male and female, and then change male to female, and again in the description I type male to female. Okay. So all this is going to do is give you a couple of different options, and let's go ahead and run the file, and you'll see that you're only able to click one or the other. Okay. Now I could enter a third entry if I wanted to, and I could say other, and that'll give somebody a third. Again, limited choices. And you'll see that if they click on other, male or female, it's only those three choices. And I'm going to go ahead and back out the other field here. It's not necessary. The other button. Alright, so that's a radio button. That's how that works. The next one I want to show you is checkboxes. And this one's pretty easy too. Let me just update this thing here. I'm going to copy my code and paste it. Excuse me. I'm going to save the file as checkboxes. Alright, now with checkboxes, what a checkbox does is it lets you select 0 or more options of a limited number of choices. So in general, a checkbox is very similar to a radio button. It just looks a little different. Okay. So if I want to say something like this, that I have a bike or I have a car. Okay. Again, just the standard input tag. The type is a checkbox. Your name would be something like vehicle. Okay, that's what it says in the example here in the web page for the W3 Schools web page, so we'll just use that. And a value is, in this case, I'll just say bike. Okay, and then I would just put I have a bike. Put in a line break because I'm going to have another checkbox next to it, or below it, sorry. And then same thing in this case for car. I'm going to copy my code. That's the easiest way to do it. I'm going to say I have a car instead of a bike, and for the value instead of bike it'll say car. Okay. Pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and run my code, and you'll see that I can choose one or more here, or 0 or more. Okay, with the radio button I can only select one. But here, say, do you have a person can have a bike and can have a car? Okay, so that would be a good use of a checkbox, versus what we have with our radio buttons was, is a person male or female? Well, virtually all people are either male or they're female. There's not really a neither or a mixture of the two, other than some extreme circumstances. So here you would have, when you're talking about gender, it's more appropriate to have a radio box, or a radio button, sorry, because you only have that one option that you can choose from. But with checkboxes, let's say, what are your favorite colors? Not color singular, but colors plural. Like for myself, I have three colors that I really like. I really like red, blue, and green. Okay. Well, if I had those options, I might say I like red, I like blue, and then underneath I like green. Okay. It's another example of why you'd use a checkbox, because you can have multiple values. See, that's why that's important. All right. Now, one of the things that you'll have is a submit button. That's the next thing I'm going to show you. And a submit button, that's used to send form data to a server. Okay, so right now, in all the examples that I've showed you, we're just looking at the little bits and pieces of code to create a basic form. But with a submit button, we can actually send that data somewhere. Okay? In the case of this course, we'll just send an email off to somebody. We'll generate an email, and then you click send, and it sends it off to whoever the recipient is. Okay? So here's how you create a submit button. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that text fields example that I opened or created. I'm going to copy the code from that, and then I'm going to create a new file called submit button. Okay. All right. All right. So all I need is I don't need that second field. I just need one, and I'm gonna just say that I'm looking for somebody's username. Okay. And then the input type is text, and the name I'm just gonna put username, and then whatever they want to type in, that's fine. And then well, I'm going to use the example that they show you in the text. So I'm going to put the submit button right next to it. Okay, that's why I removed that line break. Okay, so your input type for a submit button, the type is submit. Okay, and the value, what we're going to actually say on the button, it can be anything, but by default it's submit with a capital S. Okay. Self-closing tag. Go ahead and run the code. Oops. Here we go. So if I type in Bob as my username and I hit submit, and it'll, well, right now it won't do anything, but later on when we tie it to a script or whatever, it'll actually send that data off to the script or off to the server. Okay. So anyways, that's what a submit button looks like. Now, if I want to do a reset button, or a cancel button, or whatever, all you need to do is just type in a reset button. And all that a reset button does is it just wipes out the form data, whatever was typed in. Okay. So if I click submit, then it sends off for processing. If I click cancel or reset or whatever you want to call it, it's just a reset button that you see here. It just clears out this form data. Okay. All right. So those are the real basic types of forms and form inputs. Let's go on to a little bit more of the advanced stuff here, and you'll actually see some examples too in the W3 Schools reading for this week. I'll just drill down through some of them here. Now, a couple of them I've already done. I've showed you how to make a radio button, showed you how to make a checkbox. Let's go ahead and do a simple drop-down list. This is what a simple drop-down list looks like. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to copy the code that I was just working on. Save it as a simple drop-down list. All right. So let's say I want to create a drop-down list where we're going to look at a few different car brands. You have a new tag, and it's called the select tag. Okay. This is what creates the drop-down list. You give it a name value, a name attribute, and I'm going to call it cars. And then you have another tag called option, and then you have a value. Since you're only selecting one for now, your value would be, they'd all be unique. So in this one, I'm going to say Volvo. You're going to close out the opening option tag and then type in a description of that field, of that selection, and your option value actually over your option in your list. And then you type in a closing option tag. I'm going to copy that line of code that I just finished and strip a couple of things. I'm going to strip a couple of things out. So I'm just going to say option value, nothing in the value, nothing in the description, and then a closing option tag. And I'm going to paste this. I'm going to copy it, and paste it twice more because I have a couple of other brands I want to put in here. Okay. Second one is Saab. Third one is Fiat, and fourth one is Audi. Person who developed this example must like European brands. Speaking of which, my brother-in-law has a Saab, and the company went bankrupt, and now he can't find parts anymore. I feel bad for the guy because I just bought it too shortly before the company went bankrupt. It's very sad. But yeah, I got a 3-year-old Saab that's worth probably about a couple of grand now, and can't find any parts for it. Can't fix it when it breaks, and it's just very sad. Okay, anyways, when you're all done with your options that you were loading up there, then on the next line down you just type in a closing select tag. Okay. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and run this in Chrome. And what you'll see is that I have a listing of a few different options here. Okay. Now I can put above this select tag, I can put something like a paragraph in here and just say, pick your favorite car brand. None of these are my favorite, but anyways, so we have Volvo, Saab, Fiat, Audi, and if I wanted these right next to my, if I wanted this this drop-down list right next to this colon, then I would just type that in there. There you go. All right. So that is a simple drop-down list. And all this code, you'll be able to see this in resources where I'll share it with you. Now let's say I want to take the same drop-down list and I want to give a default option, or otherwise known as a pre-selected value. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this code and I'm going to paste it into a new file. I'm going to type in a description there real quick in the comments. I'm going to copy my code. I'm going to create a new file, paste it, save it as drop-down list pre-selected value. The other thing I'm going to change here is this. Let's say I want by default, I want Fiat to show. All I need to do is put in a new attribute called selected, and this is, I don't like how this is set up. I never have, but this is the way it's done in HTML. If you want this attribute to be, or this specific option value to be selected, then you type in selected equals selected. Okay. Instead of just typing in selected, but anyways, this is the way they do it. This is more strict code. Alright, so if I want Fiat displayed by default, then I just say selected is selected in the here is an attribute for this specific brand. Okay, pretty easy. Alright, the next one I want to show you is called a text area. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to, yeah, this will work. I'm going to copy the code that I just created. Actually, I'm going to select it. value. I'm going to comment on that real quick. Alright, now I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to paste it in a new file, and I'm going to save this guy as text area. That's all one word. Okay. And text area can be part of a form or not, and usually it is. Just one moment here. Alright, well, I'll show you this way. Text area has its own tag, and it's called text area, and that is all one word. Okay. Now it has a couple of attributes that in HTML5 we can kind of get around this a little bit, but for the purposes of this course, we're primarily going to use HTML to show us how many rows and columns we have. So your first attribute is rows, and then your second attribute is columns, or in this case it's called cols, C-O-L-S. It's a shortcut for columns. So rows is how many rows of text, and columns is how many spaces. Okay? And then inside of the content you want to put inside of the text area is right after the after the opening tag. If you have any spaces or anything like that, it's going to be treated as white space. So in other words, if I hit enter and I start typing in the cat was playing in the garden, then it should, and I'm pretty sure that's the case here, yeah, it should render properly. Now if I have this indented, it might be fixed with HTML5. It's not. Okay. If I have any kind of indentation like a tab or extra spaces, anything like that, what you'll see is those extra spaces will show up inside this text area. Okay? So we don't want that to happen. We just want to go immediately, no indentation at all, type in your content. And what this is content inside the text area is what's displayed by default. Okay. Alright, now we're going to be using text area quite a bit later on, but for right now I just wanted to kind of show you that. Okay. Alright, now let's say we just want to create what's called a sample button, like just a regular old button. Here's how you do that. You're going to create a lot of these later, so you'll have plenty of practice. I'm going to copy my code that I made and I'm going to paste it. Just save this one as button. This button doesn't do anything, it just kind of sits there and says hello world. So we need to set up our form. And all it is just an input tag. The type is button. And then the value right now is whatever you want it to say. In mine, it's just going to say hello world. Okay, nothing fancy. Alright. Nope, let me run that. There we go. Again, doesn't do anything yet. We'll make it do stuff later on. So that's just a real simple button. Now let's say in this next one here, and we're actually getting pretty close to the end on this video, so kind of bear with me here, but if we want field sets around form data. Now, what this means is that you want to make a little, you want to make your forms look kind of nice. Now we're going to do a lot of this in CSS, but you can also do it, a little bit of it in HTML too. You can kind of make things look nice to a certain extent. And what we do is we put in a field set and a legend. So let's say we want to create a new file. I'm going to copy the code that I just created because I'm going to use a little bit of it. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this one field sets round form data. Alright, let's take that one out. So the first thing you do after you create your form, your opening form tag, is you type in a new tag, and it's called field set, all one word. And then give yourself a few empty lines, and then type in a closing field set tag. So everything inside this field set tag is going to have basically a box around it. Okay. And now what we need to do is indent and then type in another new tag called legend, and then close out that opening tag and then type in whatever it was that you want to use as a legend. So we're going to say personal information, colon, close out the legend tag. Okay. And now your input tags will be underneath this. Okay. So I'm going to say name, and the input type is text. My size by default, I'm going to just set it to 30. That's what's in the code here. And then I'm going to give myself a line break. Now I have two other fields that I need to do that are basically the same. So I have name, email, and date of birth. Just change the description here. Okay. And then my date of birth, I'm going to set that to 10 because it doesn't need 30 characters. And I'm also going to get rid of that line break at the end because that's the end of the form. Alright, so here's what we should see when I run this. Again, this is the field set, everything inside. Your legend sits at the top of the field set. Okay, this is where we typed in personal information, was the thing inside the legend, and then we have three fields. We have name, email, and date of birth. Okay, again, a little bit of formatting looks kind of nice. Maybe if we took that colon out of there, it would actually probably look quite. I think it would look better. Let's pull that colon out. Yeah. Save your name, email, date of birth. Looks nice. Again, with CSS, we would clean this up a lot more, and we'll actually do that next week. But for now, we'll just kind of leave it at that. So that is a field set around form data. Now, let's say I want to type in, we're getting a little more complex here, and I want to type in a form with text fields and a submit button. This is how I do it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to we'll comment this code, and then we'll create a new file real quick. Alright, copy the code, paste it, let's make a new file, save this one as forms with text fields and submit button. These file names are getting longer. Alright. Now, this is when you start getting into files that actually do something. We're going to set the form action to be called some other script, an active server page called HTML form action.asp. This thing doesn't exist, doesn't do anything. Then we're going to say the method, which we're going to get into later. And if you're taking business programming, which if you have an elective that you have free, if you've enjoying this class so far, I highly recommend you sign up for it. Or if it's one of your requirements, I'm looking forward to working with you in that. And shameless plug here. But anyways, your method, in this case it's get. And there are two different types, get and post. Anyways, I'll go over that later in another class. Now, I'm going to delete all this stuff with field set. All I want to do is get the person's first name and last name, and then I'm going to create a submit button here. Alright, so I'm going to say first name, and the input type is text. The name, again, is just first name. and the value, in this case, it was Mickey. Okay. Now this is going to give you a default value of Mickey. Okay. And then last name, actually, let's just copy that code. Change stuff that says first name to last name. So easy. And then instead of Mickey, we're going to say mouse. Okay. Keep the line break because underneath there I'm going to put a submit button in. And then finally, just type in a submit button. So the input type is submit. Value equals submit with a capital S. That's default. And alright, I'm just going to type in this quick paragraph. It says, if you click, actually, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'll just leave that. Alright, so that's our form. It has first name and last name. It has default value of Mickey and default value of mouse. Let's go ahead and launch. So here's what you see right here is this value's already been set for Mickey and for mouse, and then if you want to change it, just delete the text and type in whatever you want. When you hit submit, then you'll see, well, you won't see anything because this file doesn't exist, but it tries to call a file called htmlformaction.asp, and if that existed, I don't know what it would do, but it would probably say, hi Mickey Mouse, how are you doing, or whatever. In another class, I'll actually show you how to build that stuff, but in this one, we just need it as an example. Alright, so let's show you a form with checkboxes and a submit button. Excuse me. I'm going to just copy my code, create a new file. I'm going to save this one as forms with checkboxes. As you can see, we're starting to get a little bit more detailed here in what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say two different things. I'm going to put in a checkbox for I have a bike and another one called I have a car. So again, its input type is checkbox, okay, just like we did before. My name is vehicle. My value is bike. Close out the opening tag and then just type in I have a bike. Need a line break. And then copy the code that I just created. And then instead of bike, we'll say car. Just change the code that you need. And then let's give ourselves a couple of line breaks here. Alright. And that should just have a couple check boxes and then a submit button. And that's what we have. Okay. Pretty straightforward stuff. Now, all I'm going to do is copy. I'm going to make a new one called with radio buttons instead of check boxes. Okay, copy my code, the whole thing, paste it into a new file, and instead of check boxes, we'll just say radio buttons. And all I need to do here is just set my input type to radio, and I'm just going to do male and female again. And change my value to male, male and female. And the description mail. Okay. Same thing we did earlier. It's just we're just adding that submit button basically to the bottom of it. So it's actually a full form. So male or female, I want to go submit. Again, this script doesn't do anything, but there you have it. Alright, so form with checkboxes, I'm just going to change that to be radio buttons. Now that finally, the last form that I want to show you is to send email from a form. So I'm going to copy my code, I'm going to paste it into a new file. I'm going to save this one as send email from a form. Okay. Alright, now if you're going to send email from a form, it's quite different from the other methods that we've used before. It's critical that you use this method here. Okay, so where it says form action, you need to type in an all uppercase mail to, no spaces, MAILTO colon whoever's email address. I'm just going to say todd@nospam.org. Okay. Your method is post, P-O-S-T, all lowercase. And then you need to type in ink type. That's ENCTYPE, equal sign, an open quote, and then text / plain, PLAIN. Okay. And that's / no spaces. If you don't format that properly, your form will never work. Okay. Alright, and then all I'm going to do is have name, email, and a comment. Okay. And that's it. So I'm going to say name, and then I'm going to do a line break because I want that on a different line. And then the input type is text. The name is name, and you'll see this in a second why this name attribute is important. And my value is your name. Close out that opening tag and then put in a new line break. And then repeat the same for email and for comments. And then for my email type, I'm going to say mail, and then your email, and this value, my default value. And our comment, I'm just going to say your value is your comment. The input type is text, the name is comment, and then I'm going to give a default size here of 50. I've showed you that one before. Alright, I have two buttons. I have a submit button, and I'm going to retitle that one, and then I have a reset button. So for my value for my submit button is send, and then my reset button is reset. I'm going to put in a couple line breaks after comment. Okay. Run the form. Okay. What did I do there? Oh, had a little typo. My input type for reset, I had resent in there. Resent. There you go. Alright, so in my name, I'm going to put in Todd Jamison, my email, tjamison@csc.edu, and my comment is, this is the most awesome form ever. And then 3 exclamation points. I'm going to hit send, and what you'll see is it's going to open up my default email client, and it's going to have my who's it to, okay? And then remember the fields that we had on there before? The names were name, mail, and comment. Okay, this is what's actually being sent off to a script to process this stuff, or in this case, off to an email. So the simplest form that I had for somebody to contact me, like a contact us page on a website, would be this mail to and then whatever the mail address is. Well, these are the forms that would be populated by that form, or the field, sorry. And then you just hit send and it goes to whoever it's supposed to go to. Okay, we can even put the subject in. Later I'll show you how to do that. Again, pretty straightforward standard stuff. If I hit send, it would have went to that fake email address. If I hit the reset button here, it'll clear everything out and go back to your default values. So anyways, interesting stuff, and we'll delve into it a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. But for now, I just wanted to give you a basic rundown of how forms work in HTML. You have a ton of files out there to look at. The examples of them are also in the W3 Schools documentation, and you can click on any of those and play around with them on the W3 Schools site, which I do urge you to do. As always, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email, and I'll get right back to you. Thanks.